What's up, guys? It's Friday, so welcome to another FifthDread Friday, brought to you by me, FifthDread from FifthDread.com, also known as Eric Smith. Now, what you guys have been seeing is pretty much me talking about my arcade cabinet. I mean, every Friday I like to do whatever, FifthDread Fridays, if you don't know what it's about by now, it's pretty much about whatever the heck I want it to be about. Whatever's going on in my life, whether or not it's building a project, doing an arcade cabinet like this, whether or not it's a technology podcast, whether or not it's whatever. I pretty much do whatever. So I told you guys last week that I wanted to show you the internals of the arcade cabinet. So I have it sitting on my table here. So I want to point out a few other things that I was kind of thinking about over the course of the last week. So we already went over the hardware. So let's go ahead and open it up now that it's sitting back here. We'll start on the back here. And you can see my little LED garbage little ring here. There's actually, this is where the CPU fan, this pretty much cools the CPU down. You have the water reservoir right here, and I'm going to show you that. We're going to go ahead and unlock it, and I have this sitting here. It's just going to rest right here so it doesn't bend up the power cord sticking out the back here. I actually have it turned on right now, so we're going to see it in its full glory. So let's go ahead and get a top-down view. I've showed you guys this earlier in my hardware video. I made a few changes and I want to point them out. Alright, so let's get a good view of it. Let's make sure it's still working. Yeah, it's still working. Okay, so let's go over this. I changed my fan. Okay, right here I had a, let me actually go ahead and go into my closet, and where's that? Here we go. So I had one of these guys. This is a Cooler Master, 120 millimeter fan, silent fan, and red LEDs. Really happy with it for the longest time until now. I wanted to get a bigger fan because 120 millimeter, while it's just fine, this hole is actually meant for a larger fan. I drilled a hole as close to, basically, alright, I knew I was going to have 120 millimeter fans both here and here. This is an intake. This is where the exhaust hole. So when I drilled the holes, and I'm going to go ahead and shut it to show you the hole. Alright, it's going to be kind of hard to see because I don't really have... You can actually see in here, this fan, you can actually see the entire thing spinning there, but there's actually, this hole isn't as bad, but the hole on the bottom is actually a little bit too big. So you actually, when I had this fan, say I had the fan like that on the base, you actually see gaps here, 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 and here. And I wanted it to be completely covering that, that hole. So what I had to do, I went out and bought a 140 millimeter Corsair fan. They just came out with a new line of fans. So I went ahead and bought one. Alright, let me sit this down. And here it is. Now the great thing about this fan, guys, is that it is super quiet. It has rubber padding on each corner. It's held in place by Velcro right now, which is just fine, guys. It actually dampens the amount of noise it makes. Below this fan, this is an intake, remember. So actually I have a filter on the bottom. So it actually filters. And while I know right here it's looking like there's no gap for air to come in, but if I come in the front here and I squat down, there's actually, you can actually see through there. See that? There's actually enough room for air to come through and come into the case. This was the best way I could think of doing it. I didn't want to ugly the sides by having intakes. I didn't want to ugly the top. Well, actually, it would have worked just fine on the top. You don't really see. But I figured because heat rises, having it, if anything, on top, it should be an exhaust. but I went ahead and made it on the back. And the reason I did that was because I knew I was going to be opening and closing this door. And because I'm opening and closing the door, the motherboard is going to move. And when the motherboard moves, this reservoir needs to be in a place where it doesn't yank. So anything that's on this board, that's why I mounted everything on this board, because I need everything to stay where it is. If I mounted things here on the sides, on the top, then every time I open it, I would have cords like reaching out to the top. Now you can get around that if you have really long cords going along the side, up, mounting them just right. Now there's a few situations where things have to connect to the motherboard, but actually, aren't on this back piece of wood. And that situation here is actually the light. Now you can't really see any light coming through there because I replaced the light I had before. Actually turn that off because it's really just wasted electricity. Inside of there is a cold cathode, of a actual white one, but it gives a blue tint. It never worked well, so I don't even use it. Alright guys, the power cord for it just runs down like this, and actually the fan is connected here. And it's just connected right here. So another thing, guys, a lot of you guys, I don't know if you guys have considered this or not, but when I mount this motherboard, I have mounted it to this acrylic sheet. I told you guys in the earlier video to have this space right here. You want to have at least like 1.5 inches, 2 inches right here for all these cables, because when you shut it, you're actually sandwiching everything against the bottom of the case there. And plus you have this fan here, so you want to have a little bit of room for that airflow to be able to move. You know what I mean? You don't want to be just blocking the fan with this back piece. It's actually not. You have enough room right there to where the air comes through. Just enough. And actually, that intake fan, it intakes air. It's actually at a very slow speed. And same thing with this. Let me talk about fan speed. When I first had this fan, let's talk about 3 fans. 1, and then 2 fans here. This is 1, and this is 1. So the thing about these fans is they were super loud. These 2 are the fans. Let's see. This one's the Cooler Master, and this one's the one that came with this reservoir. They were super loud. All 3 of these were super loud. So what I had to do was buy a fan controller. So let's talk about that. You can actually see this piece right here in the center, and that's the fan controller, and I have it mounted in there. Let me see if I can get a good angle. You see those 3 knobs? Alright, those 3 knobs control the speed of each of the 3 fans. That's pretty awesome, right? So they used to be plugged in directly into the power supply, the 4-pin Molex connectors, and that makes the fans run at full speed. Now there's a way to cut down the voltage in half so they run at half speed, but I wanted direct manual control so I could run at maximum speed with maximum quietness, so to speak. So basically all I did was, this is my quietest fan and these are my loudest fans. These are also my most important fans. So basically I ran Super Smash Bros. Brawl, which is effectively probably the most intensive game on the CPU, right? And I had heat monitors up in the corners. I had a GPU and a CPU monitor to monitor the temperatures, and I didn't want to hit over like 70 Celsius. I think I'm sitting at like 65 degrees constant at max, not max CPU load, but at a likely heavy CPU load. It's like 65 degrees Celsius. It's actually pretty good, guys. It was when I turned down the fans all the way, it goes up past 70 degrees and keeps getting hotter. So I said, no, I want it to be cooler than that. So I turned it up to the point where it was still silent when I had this shut, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that I still had pretty good performance ratio right there. I had it still stayed cool, even though I had to add a near silent setting for all the fans. Alright, so you can actually see my wireless. This is my little wireless USB card. It's actually connected to my network right now, I think. Actually, you know what? It probably isn't. I probably got to change the settings, but This is how I connect to my network to be able to talk to it. Alright, so I think that's all I really want to say, guys. As far as the cabinet, that's my changes. I added the fan controller. I added, you know, my 140 millimeter fan. Things I want to do in the future. I mean, I'm looking at this cabinet like it's, you know, the internals make me happy. There's a few flashy things I want to do, guys, with LEDs. I was thinking about changing my control panel and adding LED buttons. So you can buy certain buttons with LEDs. You can buy an LED controller, so it would make it totally cool. But see, when you do that, there's a few ways to do it. The simple way is to just throw them in and make them so they light up when you push them and they flash maybe. But when you install LEDs, you also have to configure the software for it too, guys. The way the software works for your buttons, you should look up other videos on YouTube. They have it so when you turn the cabinet on, they go through a certain pattern. Maybe they all blink in a row. Maybe one side will be one color, the other will be one color. They have red, green, blue buttons or LEDs, so they can be any color and flash and do all kinds of stuff. You can have it so for certain games, certain buttons light up, meaning that these buttons are used for this game. You can have it so before a game even loads, it'll tell you on the screen which buttons do what thing. So it'll flash like this button, it'll say punch. It'll flash this button, and on the screen and audio actually say kick. This one will say like high kick, low kick. It'll blink the button and give you the controls. So that is totally cool. Also really complicated. And you know how many games I have? Some of the games would be supported, probably MAME, out of the box. You probably could get MAME to work really well, but all your custom games on all these other emulators would be super difficult. Super difficult to do. So I think that's the internals, guys. Oh yeah, I'm getting a lot of questions about how to get stuff to work. So check this out, guys. I have a lot of software on here, so let me run through it real quick again, guys. We start off at arcade games, and this is all MAME. You'll be able to find support for this all over the place. In fact, that's pretty much the general reason you need Hyperspin is MAME if you're going to be running an arcade cabinet. All this stuff is like JNES, SNES, or I forget the emulators. That's Nintendo 64 emulator is Project 64. GameCube, this is, shoot, it's the same one as Wii. What is it? Project 64, then you have, Dolphin. Okay, Dolphin emulator is for both Wii and GameCube. Game Boy, you'll be able to get Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, no problem. DS emulator, you shouldn't be able to have a problem finding that. It wasn't too hard. Sega emulators are all the same. I forget what the actual emulator name is. Sega CD, same emulator, same thing. Saturn, oh man, I forget the emulator. Don't even ask. I'll have to look into the config. It's been a while. Dreamcast, you have, shoot, I forget what it's called. If I launch it, is it going to say? If I launch a game, let me see. Let me just try to do Bomberman or something. Let me see if it says. Unless it like freezes on me or something. Okay, there we go. Looks like it's going to go. I need to get rid of that mouse pointer. Sometimes you have to configure your, I think it's a AHK, Null DC, there it is. That's the emulator for Dreamcast, and I found all these online too. So let's go back. Let's see, let's go back again. Game Gear, you won't have a problem with. TurboGrafx 16, you shouldn't have a problem with. Neo Geos, 3DO, no, you won't. PlayStation, that's EPSX-E. That's a really good emulator. PS2, I don't remember what that emulator is. Ugh. It shouldn't be too hard to find. Honestly, it's been out for years. It just hasn't been, you know, it hasn't been very useful until now. So let's see, Laserdisc. That's actually Daphne. the Daphne emulator. Neo Geo systems. Actually, this is just MAME games. It just has a separate category for Neo Geo games. And pinball. This is like pinball. What is this? Oh, let me see what this is. You'll be able to find this actually pretty easily, I think. Let me just load up Alien. Future Pinball. If you guys can't see that very well, it actually runs like a pinball machine simulator. And it's super cool. I got the buttons, I think, this side buttons here, I think, are the flippers. Let me see here. I gotta put money in. So, I have it so money is down here, I think. Oh, actually, no, that's the... That makes sense. This is supposed to be that. So, where's money at? Should be... maybe it's one of these. Okay. So yeah, this is like where a plunger would be for a normal arcade machine. You'd pull it, so I have the button right there. Wow. And then my flippers, where are they at? Okay, yeah. Flipper 1 here, flipper 2 right here. Yeah! Oh, I suck. Alright, Future Pinball, that's always a cool one. DOS, oh man, what do I use for a DOS emulator? I don't even know. Jesus, what is it? Let's poke one. Let's see what it says. DOSBox. Okay. It's DOSBox, but it's something else too. It said Defend. I'm going to have to check for you guys. If you want to know how to get one of these oddball machines working, give me a shout. And I will give you everything I have as far as AHK files. Do not ask me for ROMs. Do not ask me for the actual downloads or the emulators, please. And go ahead and ask me for what I have, and I'll give you all the information you need. You can Google it. Guys, I did it. I Googled it. I found everything. For PC games, if you don't have Hyperspin 2.0, or it's called Hyper Launcher 2.0, look up Hyper Launcher 2.0. That's going to help you in finding out how to get all these emulators to run with Hyperspin. They have these modular files. They're called AHK files. These files will let you go in and configure how Hyperspin reacts to each emulator. That's how you get all these emulators to work. Most of them have official builds, official AHK files. Okay? That's how you know which emulators you need. You go to hyperlist.hyperspin.com. You go, you look at the AHK files for different emulators, and you know, oh, this AHK file supports EPSXE 1 point whatever, right? Whatever version it is, find that exact version of that emulator, download it, and that AHK file will give you the ability to launch that emulator using Hyperspin. I almost guarantee it. And when you have a weird piece of software, like, you know, something that's not supported. GameCube and Wii are not supported. How do you get these to work? You build your own AHK file, guys. You go in there, you find a generic one, like, look at the one for N64 and be like, okay, what variables are in that AHK file? Because really all it is a little bit of scripting. The scripting is called auto hotkey, right? So you go in and you're like, alright, auto hotkey has this variables. You can make the screen go black. You can make the mouse move over here so it doesn't show up in the middle like it did earlier. You can make it so certain buttons actually are key combinations. So for example, say I want to launch an emulator like PlayStation 2, which is also not supported. Say whenever I launch it with Hyperspin, I'm having a problem. I used a generic AHK file. I launched it in Hyperspin, and it shows up in window. Alright? And it's not going full screen, no matter what you do. Now, one way I got around this was by going full screen and then hitting Alt F4 on the keyboard. Alt F4 closes the program. Sometimes it'll save that I was in full screen last time I closed, so next time I open, I'm going to be in full screen. Sometimes it'll do that, honestly. You got to play with the programs to figure out what their little quirks are. If you can't figure that out, see if the emulator has settings for itself. Hyperspin has settings, but there are settings for each emulator. So this PlayStation 2 emulator, you have to go in and see if it has like an INI file that has configuration for it. If it says there's a full screen variable, like start game in full screen, make that true, and then it will always start in full screen. Now, say no matter what you do, the only way to make it full screen is by using a keyboard combination. Like the standard one is like Alt Enter, or like I think it's like Shift Enter or something. It might be Alt Enter, right? That's like a Windows like full screen this thing. To make that happen, you can program your AHK file to send a command, right? Say like 10 seconds after you launch a PlayStation 2 game, it sends an Alt-Enter or whatever to the computer, and that'll make it full screen for you automatically. So whenever you launch the game, after a few seconds, you can refine it just so it's perfect, and so it'll send that command to full screen. Alright, you have to play with it. You have to learn HyperLaunch 2.0. You have to learn how to be able to build your own AHK files if you want to be able to. And I mean, I can help you guys. I can show you guys what I have on mine. So, if you guys are too lazy to like look it up, that's fine. Just send me an email. Send me a message, and I'll try to respond. We'll see if we can work something out. We'll see if we can teach you something. But in the meantime, good luck. So let's see, that's all my software stuff I want to go over. For PC games, a lot of you guys are wondering, all you have to do, basically each of these games are installed under my PC directory, right? They're all shortcut files. So in hyperconfig, you go into hyperconfig and you choose a ROM directory. Basically, you make shortcut files for each of these. And if you don't know what a shortcut file, like, it actually is a file extension of LNK for link, right? So if I created shortcuts for each game, basically made links and put them all into one folder, change the executable type to LNK or whatever it is, right? And then make it so it goes to that folder for the ROMs. Basically, those LNK files are going to be ROMs to Hyperspin, to HyperLaunch, to Hyper config. It's going to be like their ROMs. So whenever you launch one of these, it's thinking you're launching a ROM. Really, you're launching a shortcut that goes directly into that game. Alright, and as far as the AHK files or whatever, ACK files or whatever, as far as that goes, I forget. Don't even ask me. Just look online. Well, you can ask me if you want. But all I did was look online, and I found all that information just fine. Ouch. So, what have we learned? Hopefully a lot. Hopefully something, at least. If we've learned something, then these videos are good. If we haven't learned anything, then, well, it's kind of crappy. Oh, by the way, this is my LED light controller. It's kind of just chilling here. This cable, let's see, it snakes, and then it feeds, like, this is where it plugs in, and then here it is. It goes through this crack. There's one of the cracks I was telling you about. And that's how it goes out front. Let me go ahead and shut it. Ugh. Shut it like that. Alright. So, what do you guys want for next week's video? Do you want some more arcade? Do you want some more tech talk? What do you guys want? I'll give you whatever you want. Today was another quick video with my cell phone, no studio setup. I'm kind of lazy at the moment. I got a lot of studying to do for my test. I'm doing CCNA for work, so I got to get my CCNA certification. Trying to get my study on. In the meantime, this is FifthDread from FifthDread.com. Please like, please subscribe. I'll see you guys next week.